Hello. This episode is just like Saturday Night Live depicted in their joke about podcast and fathers and sons. It was a conversation not very different from all the conversations I have with my father. And I have to say that I learn uncountable things from that man and the way he goes about learning about himself and asking himself important questions and constantly challenging his own thought process. A man after my own heart, my dad, Rusty Haley. We saw each other recently, and we started a sort of a debate, philosophical conversation. And it came to like an abrupt stop when we just couldn't agree on something. And, I don't think any one of us were trying to bump into that wall, but I still appreciated it. I still adored the fact that I could have this conversation with my father, out of nowhere, and have emotions and have reactions and just exposure to each other's personality. And I was kind of embarrassed about the Saturday Night Live thing because I think it's profound that fathers and sons talk to each other. But it is an emotional thing. And in this particular episode, we talk about, a little bit of everything, but I think we more or less just kind of challenge each other's thought processes, where we're at in life and what we do for a living. And my father happens to be an agile coach for a career. He is a self-taught man, and he's full of knowledge that he expedites his own education by not going to college in some cases, because he can't get as deep into the information if he's got a schedule to keep. So, his study is ongoing. His research is ongoing. He doesn't seem to stop reading and taking in information. So, but what I wanted to do was read the definition of an agile coach to you from an online source such as Google. Okay. Here, stop the music, please. Agile coaches help train corporate teams on the agile methodology and oversee the development of agile teams to ensure effective outcomes for the organization. They are responsible for guiding teams through the implementation process and are tasked with encouraging workers and leadership to embrace the agile method. So basically, it's kind of mental health coaching in terms of conducting business, helping people sort of process their take on the scenario that's given and the solutions provided and the process of discovering other solutions to solve problems, to help build or implement something, some strategy into the company or some application of some sort. But we talk about that, and I broke the conversation into two parts because it's long, and if it's out of sequence in any of the stories, I do apologize. But it's hard to keep up with someone who's quite wordy, and but whatever. It's my dad. I love the guy. I think you will too, and I hope you enjoy. Bye. I'm just a wandering nomad out on the interstate. Eventually all these roads just end up looking the same. And now it's time for another episode of Relative Road.
You think that your golden solution or plan is the greatest invention in the universe. But the reality is, when the universe considers that thought, it dies from laughter. It dies at the ridiculousness that you could come up with something better than the universe could.
That's trying to put human characteristics on.
Sometimes that's the only way we can understand them, is to make them relatable to our experience.
That's why aliens have bodies similar to people.
That's why when looking at a situation, that's why it's beneficial to sometimes take, you've heard of first position, second position, third position.
Yes.
That's why it's beneficial to sometimes take the position of the alien, which is like fifth, sixth, or seventh.
Yeah.
Out there. And some of the attributes of taking the alien position is the alien doesn't understand language, doesn't understand words, doesn't understand emotions. But when you look at a situation playing out without understanding those things, are there any learnings, meanings, or messages, or observations, or perspectives that would be of value when you take the alien position? What do you observe when you can't even understand what's going on? What's available to be discovered?
Right.
So another way of saying that is, you're in the alien position. You're sitting in a position of no interpretation. You're just taking in data.
Right.
What is there to learn from that?
Like any situation you're unfamiliar with, let's say like police work. I mean, police have to be trained to enter into a number of situations. And
anywhere from spontaneous love to spontaneous combat.
Yeah. But I think the initial approach that they possibly maybe teach people being trained to do this is the importance of steadiness and observational skills.
Non-judgmental observation.
Yeah.
Just taking in raw data without attaching meaning to it.
Yeah. But that's a skill that
it's a learned skill.
Right. That training.
It becomes easier the more grounded you are in yourself.
Yeah.
Because the more grounded you are in yourself, the less threatened you are by external things. And
correct. Yes.
That's half of it. The other half of it is you realize that when it comes to threats or external things and threats, you're better able to realize that most threats are unreal.
Yes.
Not all, but most.
Yes. Yeah, and I think there's a high percentage of the time that you can reveal a larger responsibility attached to you than you had initially thought. What do you mean
by responsibility?
In terms of your perspective on the outcome. So if there's some element of an outcome that you largely disagree with, but you were a participant in the genesis of this event, let's just say you were there for the birth of some idea, and later down the road you find yourself face to face with an alternate idea that is unfamiliar and, in your perspective, harmful to the success of the situation. If in that moment you neglect that in the beginning of this process there was an element of unpredictability and the possibility of a negative potential or a negative outcome, and then we fast forward to the outcome itself, and we're standing in a moment where we can choose disappointment or we can choose a student-like approach, like an opportunity to learn. So it's instead of a disappointment, it's just an opportunity to see. And I think this is the difference in good leadership and bad leadership, right? Is that the more efficient someone is at handling the dip,
So what is the dip?
The dip is is taking a chance and dealing with the inevitable failure.
Draw the picture first. If you're going to use words like dip, draw the picture first.
Okay. So let's say a company is attempting to change some standard of the industry by creating a new way of doing it. Let's say like a bar during this time is, let's say, hiring younger people who are, let's say, a little more aesthetically fit, and encouraging these young people to be flirtatious and to be fun and to make the to-go experience a different experience. And, you know, you're essentially asking someone to sell themselves in a way, you know, that may be inappropriate to some minds out there. It's a bit of a...
Yeah, I don't know if it's selling so much as selling themselves as it is. One way of looking at it might be what they're selling is helping all parties remember that we have a couple of things, more in common than we don't, and we all have more good things than we don't. And so if we can redirect the focus from A, you're different from me, and B, I'm not as good off as I am. If we change those and reverse those to we are very alike and we do have good things, that elevates where you want to go.
Yes.
So it's not selling, it's reminding.
But see, this is from the perspective of, let's say, a healthy, sound, happy mind. Okay? So, but from the perspective of, let's say somebody is the next door business and they decided that they weren't going to utilize people that way for whatever reason. They didn't want to, they felt like it was inappropriate or wrong. And then they're having to shut their doors. They can't hold, well, it wouldn't be productive to hold the neighbors in contempt for choosing to do something that wasn't agreeable with them about a situation, and it worked. And then this person's mad because they cheated. They got so-and-so. Their perspective comes from a painful existence.
Fear.
Yes.
Lack.
As opposed to, let's say this guy next door is an entrepreneur, it's his first store. And he learns in that moment, like, oh, okay, maybe that was actually a good idea. As opposed to, you know what, I didn't sink to that level, and, you know, I'll figure. Yeah. Either way, you're going to get
You may not get to that place until it's the 10th business you've done.
Yes. But I think that, you know, when it comes to helping your friends or, you know, your neighbors through your support is again, like highlighting the commonalities. Like, you know, I find that in most situations that I'm in, as far as like deep conversations, the sooner I take responsibility of my vulnerability. So like, let's say they're talking about like, this guy cut me off in traffic, bro. I was so mad. I wanted to kick his ass, you know? And then I would tell him a story like, that happened to me. And then I like tried to fight this guy and he beat my ass on the side of the highway and I got left there alone. A lot of times, like when you admit those kinds of bad decisions, a lot of people feel like it's like disarming. It's like, oh yeah, I'm a jerk too. I did this the other day. And then all of a sudden we are in the same space and now we have commonalities. And now you feel inspired to open up and accept a new perspective. And that's where change happens, you know, but only in the space that you're safe in.
Okay, go back to the dip. What is the dip? You have not successfully described the dip.
Okay, so let's say...
Remember that picture I have on the wall.
So the dip is
how would you describe that picture?
Which picture?
In the office. The one that goes and then shows you the valley.
Oh.
The valley of despair, and then you move up to successful change.
So it's kind of like, let's say mountain biking, and you're going to go down this really difficult hill, and the last time you went, you crashed pretty hard, and you haven't been in a while. So there's a high probability that you're going to crash again. But you do it anyway because you're prepared to at least try and mitigate the pain you felt before. And you're going to subject yourselves to the opportunity that you may either A, learn how to go down this hill efficiently, or at least know where not to go or what not to do the next time, right? But you want to do this because on the other side of this dip is good health and education and a better you tomorrow. And I think that's the thing, is that we can prepare for the dip internally.
If you understand what the picture looks like and how the mechanics work, you know what's coming.
Or if you're able to tune in to your biology,
if you're listening.
Mm-hmm. And I think look, so patterns, right? We look for patterns in everything. It's mathematical. It's just what we do. Biology explains to us every day how life and death works.
If we're listening, if we're paying attention.
Okay. So, humanity has come up with clever ways to cope with A, B, or C ailment or issue. It's a personal journey to go through that, and it's really controversial to get into that, I think, as far as medication. But I think if a person, like, I was given the opportunity of healing and health because you and Barbara were in a place where you could do that for me. And, it was unpredictable in what it was, but like, I never felt threatened from you or Barbara. I felt threatened in the truth of who I was, reflected through this.
So a phrase that's coming to mind is threatened by facts.
Yes. It's scary to break open.
Threatened by seeing reality in a different way.
And getting a sense of the danger from someone else's perspective. Like the sensation of worry that you guys had was inescapable in a lot of ways. And, we all kind of jived fairly well at a lot of times, but at some point I had to go figure it out for myself, and that was where it got to a point where words are not, it's not going to.
It wasn't easy on us.
Yeah.
That's particularly Barbara.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy at all.
Yeah.
But even though it wasn't easy and she knew it was going to be hard, she was willing to take it on because in the end she knew it was worth it. But like I said earlier at breakfast, if you're an adult with no kids, as far as Barbara is concerned, you can do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
Really don't do whatever with your life that you want. But the second a child becomes involved, that's a different story. And that's the place that she comes from. And that's why she takes those types of situations so seriously, so intensely, and so with such dedication and focus, because it's the kids that matter. And when you have a kid in your life, you're impacting that kid's life. So from her point of view, if you have a kid in your life, you had better be working on getting your shit together.
And that's Barbara's, that's what she's driven to do, is to feel that out.
Well, she's the ultimate mom.
Well, the thing is, when we talk about, because you don't have to convince me. Like, I understand what Barbara's concerns are. I get that
Well, I'm not only talking to you.
Well,
so I'm not trying to convince you. I'm sharing information.
Oh, okay.
I'm not trying to convince you that there are people who don't understand or have never been introduced to some of these dynamics. And I certainly wasn't introduced to these dynamics until Barbara came into my life. And that's one of the reasons I'm so grateful for having her in my life.
Yeah.
She's brought new information and new ways of thinking into my life, and that's given me new options.
I think if you're going into the storm, then you're going into the storm. Like, I think when I mentioned to you guys, like Jen and Daryl, they can move to Seattle, whatever they want to do. Like, I'm going to be here doing the best I can to take care of my kid and my people and not lose my mind, because I think that's a possibility. I've seen other people. I've felt I've felt a tear in the fabric of reality sometimes myself. And like, you know, I just know how scary and lonely that can feel. So, and you know, like the youthful decisions I made to go through my shit, Jen's going to do it. Daryl's going to do it. I, you know, love him to death. And
it's part of the process. And that's why I always go back to, who am I to question anyone's journey? It's not for me to know.
Yeah.
And if I did know, I'd screw it up.
Yeah. It is difficult though. You know, like the way that Barbara's driven to how passionate she is about it. I think that's another thing to consider too, is like, this is just how she's translating it. And she's in a battle that she feels worthy of being in and has a justified reason. And I think that at the end of the day, like, then I wish her well on this voyage.
Well, one of the reasons it's hard for her and it's hard for other people is a number of people on the planet have never had that kind of a support system in their life.
Mm-hmm.
They've never had that kind of a support person, have never had that kind of an approach, healthy approach in my judgment, taken to being a support person for someone else. One of the things I appreciate about Barbara is her ability to cut through the bullshit and get to the simple truth, which underlies every story. And she's not only recognizes the value in doing that, but she's done enough study and has enough experience in doing that herself to understand how to go about doing it, or has a good way, a healthy way generally of doing it, and understands that underneath most stories is the truth. But you have to dig underneath the story.
Yeah.
She's good at doing that.
Yeah.
But it does take a toll on her. There's a cost.
Well,
it wipes her out energetically.
Well, if her audience isn't picking up on the signal, it's like you're running in circles.
Yeah. And like I said, most people have never experienced that, so it's very strange and unfamiliar, and we resist the strange and unfamiliar, and we're fearful of that, and we attach all sort of agendas to it that aren't really there.
Do you ever think that there's a danger there will be a cut in ties, or there'll be a rip in the...
Yes, I'm always fearful of that, but I also have to recognize that, again, that may be part of the plan. I mean, we have members in our family right now that we don't have relationships with.
Oh, I know.
And there are probably very, very good reasons that I should know nothing about, because things are playing out the way they need to.
Yeah.
For whatever lessons that need to be learned at whatever time in their journey. So when I get concerned about judging what's right and wrong and trying to start control things, I think it's probably inevitable that I'm going to screw it up, because the universe has a better way of letting things play out. And what I'm learning over these last few years is the more I let go, the more work I put into not controlling, the better, not only the better results I get, but the more peace I have in my life.
That was what I was trying to tell you in the car. Like, just stick with that. You're in your routine. You're in love. You're like a fucking freshman in high school. Just lap it up. As far as your job.
Sex.
Huh?
Except for all the sex.
Well, you had your fun. I mean, your train's gone. If you figure it out, good luck. But you probably should stretch.
That's true.
So, I don't know. It's difficult to talk to people about exercise when it's not a part of their life. I notice that. And because I'm on the other end often enough that you shy away from it, or you see a picture of somebody at the gym, you're like, fucking dickhead. Like, it's like, who has time to do that anyways?
Well, I remember you telling me a story about talking to the fat kid in this gym locker room.
Yeah, I know. I slap myself internally when I think it's one of those moments where I'm just like not proud of, and just thinking like, God, if that was me and some dude walked up and said, "Hey, fat guy, keep it up. You'll get there. Don't worry." Like, I would have had the same look on my face. That was just not necessary, but whatever. Those are humbling.
But had you not had that experience, you might not have been able to learn from it.
Yeah.
So who's to question?
That's the thing is, I am being kinder to that historical self of mine, because there's a lot of those moments where I just kind of like disappear for a second and I shake my head when I come conscious, like, oh my God, why? And you know what that is? To some degree, that is my spectator perspective. That's my judgmental sort of guy in the audience, heckling kind
There's
of
another
thing.
label you could put on it.
What's that?
Learner.
And right, but like, so what's funny is, the moments that you feel most critical in, most criticized for, and I've learned this through podcasting, is that audience is in your head. It's in your head. And not all of it is fair to say that it's just you. It is programming. It's what you hear. It's what you have been trained to think like in a lot of ways, to judge the picture of something, especially when it's presented in sort of an art form like filmmaking. And when you're looking at your memories, it's a lot like that. Like you're scanning over some of these decisions, the script that was written, and you're like, oh, I would have changed that. I'd love to go back and change that scene. But it is, that's you. That's you. And if you carry some kind of negative notion towards it, that's something to think about. The
word forgiveness comes up.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it's ongoing compassion.
Listening to you talk, I think oftentimes of things in my past that are represented to me, I suspect, for the purpose of learning more about forgiveness.
Yes. My most recent most challenging relationships have taught me that very thing. All of the challenging relationships teach me that very thing. Is what is it about me that's not working right now? Because it's nothing to do with the other person. Mom does that for me. She really, really, yeah. It pushes me because I have to eat my own words when it comes to my most challenging relationships, because I talk a lot about self-care and health and compassion and being there for people and being supportive. And I realize that, again, this is my inner government. This is my household, how I govern my life. And if I hold people in contempt for things that they don't have full control of, then shame on me. Again, I walked into a wall I knew was there, because I know some of the limitations, and I know that my expectations are most days unreasonable when it comes to other people.
Well, I think there's two possibilities that may occur at the same time in parallel. I don't know, but when you use the phrase "eat my own words," and then you follow that up with talking about compassion and all the positive stuff, I wonder if in that act a couple of things are occurring. One is learning about forgiveness and learning to be more compassionate. But if the other, and reframing how you hold yourselves and how you hold those prior acts. But if the other is in the process of processing that, you're using your new language of positive words and positive thinking. I had a friend one time who was going through a coaching class with a friend of his, and this guy was complaining about how his friend was just parroting what they were being taught. And I looked at him and I said, don't be so harsh on someone parroting, because a lot of the things you see, hear, feel, and observe about me that you have told me in the past you admire came as a result of my parroting. I parroted those things until they became a part of me. So don't look at parroting as put it this way, look for a way to reframe how you hold parroting. Because a lot of times by just saying over and over and talking about over and over until other people are sick of you what you've learned, it's one of 1,000 pathways of getting it into your body.
Yes.
So don't be so dismissive of someone doing that when it, in all likelihood, can be a perfectly way of learning and integrating.
So the moral of the story is everybody's on their own pace. And what may look like chaos and mayhem and destruction is quite possibly the reconstruction of something better.
Well, the chaos, mayhem, and destruction may be one way of describing science.
Fair. That's what I mean, is that we're using one instrument to describe another large number of instruments.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, that the flip side of that is you cannot use the same brain to solve the problem that brain created.
Yes.
So you have to be constantly learning how to think differently.
Yeah. Growth.
And that's some piece of that fits into the learning forgiveness puzzle.
You know what's one of the signs that someone's not paying attention to that is when you hear somebody complain about music today. Because it's evolving. It's an art that evolves. And what sounds good to the generation of today, it's not, the math isn't going to be the same for the generation before, in a lot of ways. But it is something that's always evolving. And I think when someone says, I don't listen to that music because it's crap or it's this or that, it's like, well, what else do you shut the door on? What else do you not accept that's new? I mean,
I don't think that's as interesting a question as what I believe the deeper question is, which is, what would your life be like if in describing that, any variation of the words good and bad were removed from your vocabulary and replaced with words related to being different?
mm-hmm.
How would your experience of life be if you did not judge things as good and bad? You just recognize them as being different, being one thing being different from another, and that's the extent of your description.
Yeah.
You didn't include good or bad.
Yeah. Well, it is like it's reprogramming. If you're gonna focus deliberately on how you deliver a message of your story, and you're focused on the terminology and the tone and the attitude behind
judgment,
the judgment, then you're in a place where you're looking to make better. If you're looking at it, if you're deliberately trying to, because that's what they say, right? Is what you get to a point, you start watching yourself like a snake, unemotional, and you're observing your actions and your reactions to things, and then over time you start to sort of see these things unfold, earlier in their processes as time goes, and then eventually you can possibly interfere or intervene with a decision that you're making without, let's say, the new intention based on the education you've accepted. So it's like that hole where you see it and you fall in anyways. But that's like, that very thing is kind of, that's the journey, right? Is falling down and getting back up.
What's the skill in dealing with the hole? That Wayne Dyer story. What's the skill? What are the mechanics of that skill? And the repetitions there.
What I took from it.
This is back to the dip.
Mm-hmm. And what I took from it was the fear of failure. It can be debilitating. It can really, and I'm speaking from my own experience, it can really stop you from even trying. And then you're stuck on one side of the hole.
One side of the street. Or whenever a hole pops up, you do a 180.
Yeah.
And you never learn.
Yeah. And that's kind of what the message is like, you're going to fall in a hole. If you're living, you're going to fall in a hole. And it's not about good or bad.
Or avoidance.
This hole. Or avoidance. It's about...
You have to become a skillful holer.
Well, it's about the awakening. It's about the the switch to observer, because it's like this metaphysical, like,
and being curious.
but it's like this really gifted moment to the human species. Maybe other animals understand that they're animals. I don't know, but like the idea that we can talk about life and death and contemplate what other brains are doing, like that is part of the agreement, is that, okay, I acknowledge that I am in this body and that I'm in this moment. And if you do that, then the whole isn't necessarily a whole anymore. It's just a piece of the picture. And so it's not about good or bad. It's
something to be examined with curiosity.
Yeah. And
around what's possible.
And if you've got your wits about you amidst the storm, I mean, you can survive fairly easily, right? You get some shelter, stay out of the thunder and lightning, and you'll make it till morning. But the storm's coming. It's coming through. And
well, I think another interesting question to consider is this something I'm in and it's threatening? Or is this something I can step out of and turn it into, if not an enjoyable show that God created for me to enjoy, at least something I can observe dispassionately and learn from? Can I extract myself from the center of it, step out of it, get calm, get grounded, get centered, and observe what's going on? Once I get to that place, then I might be able to be of some assistance to myself or others.
But that's courage.
Hang on. I have a new definition of courage.
Okay.
Courage is the result of increased clarity.
Okay. But, so like, let's say your perceived demons or handicaps or issues, when you go face to face with those things and you stand there and stare the dragon down, that's kind of like, that's the hero's journey. And you face this dragon so many times and you get chewed up and spit out, but yet again, you're there to fight the dragon. And then finally, you learn to tame the dragon, and then you're able to leave that mountaintop with the dragon, and you fly to the next mountaintop where there lies another dragon. And, it's not like the dragons go away. You tame them.
No, it's a different way of expressing it is, can I learn to tell this story in a different way?
Yeah.
So the event doesn't go away, the story doesn't go away, the experience doesn't go away, but the nature of my relationship to it changes.
This is the neural link.
Neural link. Well, one field of study about what we're talking about is called neuro linguistic programming, NLP.
Okay. So
neuro linguistic programming. Google it.
I will, but
I'm sure you have.
But hold on. So here we are. We're in the subject of your chosen career. Third career. When did you officially get your first job in this career?
January 7th, 8th, and 9th of 2019.
So
I think it was January 7th, somewhere in there.
So you've only been doing this since then, and there's been chunks of time where you're not.
But I've been unemployed.
Yeah.
So I'm on my second job in this third career. And the transition started 3 years ago.
And this new job you started after the stay-at-home order.
No. Yes, the second job.
So you started working from home from the get-go with a team you'd never met.
Yeah. When I got the job, the stay-at-home aspect of the virus did not exist. So I was hired, and then it took 2, 3, or 4 weeks, I don't remember which, before I actually started. And in that time period, the stay-at-home aspect appeared. And well, that's just half the story. The other half of the story is not only did, okay, Rusty, now you're no longer coming in to work with us, but the team I was hired to start with got changed because the team I'm currently assigned to, I was assigned to that team because the person assigned to that team gave 2 days notice. So they had to reroute me from whatever their plans were for me to putting me in this emergency departure situation. So now it's a dynamic where not only am I not with the team, but I'm not with the team I was originally envisioned to be with.
Sure.
And that was, and then so you take those 2 elements and add on top of that a team that's in an environment that is incredible, has incredible pressure and incredible pace. So not only am I not working there and not working with my original team, but the team I'm working with, there's a 2-day transition, and this team is in an environment where the pressure and pace is unbelievable. That's what I stepped into.
Okay. So
I was very intimidated by that.
And we'll go back to that because I think I'd like to hear where you're at in this new job. But can you give me a description in your own words of what agile coaching is? That is your official title, right? As an agile coach.
That was my title in the first job of this career. My title in this second job, my current job, is Scrum Master.
Scrum Master. Okay.
So I guess I should describe what agile is, and then describe what Scrum is, and then describe what a coach is. And then we could go as far as getting into the subject of master, but that's a whole another controversy currently going on in the career field right now, is how the job is named.
Okay.
So to start with the simple stuff, agile, the way I got involved was 3 years ago in the summertime. We had a friend of the family come down from Portland, Oregon to visit with us, stay with us for a week, and her name is Deborah. And she had a job at the time working for Nike, the shoe company, as something called a Scrum Master. And a Scrum Master falls under the umbrella of something called Agile. And that week that she spent with us, she had described to me what her job was about, what Scrum is about, what Agile is about, and how it was being executed at Nike. And after hearing that, I got really excited because these things approach what I call the humanity of work from a different way of being. Mm-hmm. And that really appealed to me. And that's what got me started into this, launching this third career, was basically becoming a coach in a business environment.
Okay, so that being said, you, in my memory, doesn't recall you being too concerned with getting close to humanity. You were a pretty isolated personality. And obviously that had changed, which also fueled your need to change a career. So briefly, if you could kind of chunk it in a way, like what was it that sparked that interest in people in a career? Like you went from like, I don't really want to be in this room with all these people to like, I want to talk to everybody. Like what happened there?
Well, the first thing I want to say is your use of the word of any variation of the word isolation when it comes to me, is may, I can't assume, but may carry some childhood burden.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No argument there.
So that's one of the first things I have to consider when you use that word in relationship to me. So the question is, how did I move from your point of view in being interested with people, from not being interested with people to being interested with people? I guess it came over the course of years after looking at myself and I would describe it as curiosity born out of frustration over how I work.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered that I needed to figure out how I work. And in the process of figuring out how I work, I learned more about myself. And this takes us back to we have more in common than we are different.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that the more I learn about how I work, by inference, I learn more about how other people work. And so I got intrigued by that. Prior to that, other things had consumed my curiosity. But the more I struggled in life, the more it started dawning on me that I needed to figure out what's going on with me. And that led to gaining some insights into what goes on with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that led into insights into learning about how I think. And that led to learning about how other people think and how other people perceive the world. And going through that journey produced options for me, and it gave me more choices on how to perceive the world. And I love sharing that with other people. Mm-hmm. In order to share that with other people, you got to be with other people. And in order to do that effectively, you have to understand how people think or how people choose not to think. And that's why a common theme in what I talk about is surface level thinking versus deeper thinking, mm-hmm. and the truth underlying our stories. Because it's my judgment and experience that a number of people on the planet don't care to think as deeply mm-hmm. about some of these things as I do, and so though they don't make the discoveries of the simplicity that I do. And I see value in that, mm-hmm. and I see value in sharing that.
Okay. So would you say that that's probably the most important part of this career, or the shift in your passion, I guess?
Yeah, one way of expressing it is because I have learned how to think differently, mm-hmm. I have developed a passion around teaching other people how to think differently.
Yeah.
And that's one way of describing a coach.
Okay. I think it helps for me to hear what the core message is of your business in that realm. I like to hear that because I think we don't, like you said, we don't spend a lot of time in deep thought, or people don't spend a lot of time in deep thought about a great many things. And some of them are the simple day-to-day stuff that you have spent some time digging into. And I think
one of the things I've discovered is learning how to think deeply has simplified my life.
Yes.
Increased my peace and lowered my stress.
And I would agree. It's funny because it's like, how do you simplify something so complex as life? But it's...
Well, the first way you do that is first understanding that humans have a tendency, we humans appear to have a need to make things complex.
Yes.
And that takes us away from the simple truths of life.
Yes. And I agree with this. But that's kind of what I was trying to say, is that when, let's say, like something political or public becomes a thought trend, and we're throwing our ideas against the wall, let's just say. And it's, what was the point I was trying to make? It's like
I say to Barbara, I'm sure it's going to be something profound.
It is profound. Everything's profound. Just, it's there. Just hold on. So the idea that everyone's kind of looking for meaning, right? And in their own way. And that's really what they want for their career, is to do something meaningful.
I've heard one guy describe us as meaning-seeking machines. Mm-hmm. And meaning-generating machines.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, and this is the point I was trying to make, is that when society seems extra, or more than it would be in some sense is when there's a need for something that's not apparent to people. And it's almost like either someone is being subjected to tremendous amount of stress and pain and suffering, or someone knows another person who's being subjected to stress or pain or something, or there's some sort of translation in this person's existence that motivates them to kick and scream about it. And I think that it's when people are trying to simplify something they've made complex. But I think the simplistic part is to dial it back down to a manageable bite size, and that's the individual. When you can pull yourself out of the clouds and all the problems that exist amidst everybody and go inward and focus on things that you can change in your situation, like that's kind of the coaching that I think is being yearned for, is like, hey, I don't know what to do about this problem, but none of my neighbors do, none of my friends do, nobody I've asked has given me the help I'm looking for. And I guess so be it with a situation like this where people maybe don't have all the resources, but like, well, generally speaking, that's what people are doing.
I often think that what the problems that people see on the outside are the result of the unresolved problems on the inside.
Yeah.
So what you see out there is a result of what you see inside.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
That's why it's important to learn about how you think.
Yes.
About how people think.
Yes.
Because that process, my going through that process helped me discover that I not only do other options to see and perceive things differently exist, there are more and more of them that I can learn about, and doing that gives me more choices. Mm-hmm. So at some point down that path, the real question comes up of, if I look at the 100 different ways of looking at this situation, mm-hmm. why would I choose one that is not beneficial to both myself and others? Why would I make that choice?
Well, even better, right, is if you're still processing the event that you're trying to make a decision about, if you're still processing, and depending on how your filtration system works or however you process things, if you're not in necessarily the most desirable space for you to make the decision that you're really wanting to make, like it's going to come out differently. And I think what's important about what you do for a living now is that humanity is evolving. It's just not maybe as fast as the fastest person is out here in the world. So like a job like agile coaching is, how old is the industry?
Somewhere around 30 years. Well, let me rephrase that. The concept of agile mm-hmm. is somewhere between 20 and 40 years old. I don't remember the exact date. It was like 80s and 90s when it first got started. Basically, a bunch of guys got together that were software developer managers and said, what we're doing isn't working. We're constantly failing and producing poor quality. There's got to be a better way. So let's see what we can come up with. And they came up with this thing called agile. And agile is described as a mindset. It's described as a way of thinking. If you want some Google-worthy phrases, there's the Agile Manifesto and the Agile Principles. You could start with that. Those are indicators of different ways of thinking than we have in the past. And so it moves away from what's commonly described as a command and control way of thinking mm-hmm. to a individual but more actually to a team accountability and team control and team initiative and team motivation and team insight. Rather than being told what to do, you discover what needs to be done.
And how does that look in the office and the environment of agile coaching? Can you give me like a scenario where you are in the room to do your job and what that may look like?
Well, from a general agile point of view, instead of doing a bunch of planning and then executing the planning, that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is having people tell you what to do and having them tell you, and in some cases force you to follow the plan, whether it makes sense or not. Agile says, instead of doing a bunch of planning and telling people what to do, let's not do all the planning up front. Because in the old way of doing things, the old way is described as waterfall. So if you think of how a step-down waterfall works, and the picture on the wall says, the very first thing you do is figure out what you need to do, then you figure out what's needed, and then you figure out what the plan is, and how we're going to get there, and then at the very end, we do all that stuff that we planned. Well, the idea is it may take 6 months to do all that pre-work before you ever do the first piece of work. Mm-hmm. Well, in that 6-month period of time, what the customer needs may have changed. Probably has changed.
Okay.
So you've wasted a lot of time and energy doing all that planning. You get to 6 months later when you're ready to create the thing, and what the customer needs has changed.
Yeah.
And so in the past, software projects, software development, computer programming projects took so long that by the time they put something to use in the customer's hands, the customer's needs were different. And so these guys got together and said, how can we do this differently? And they were being interrupted.
Yeah, that's all right. Hold that thought. Hi, Barb.
By another being entering our space.
Now flip the cassette over to side B.